I've got a new box under my arm with Toon Kings and Men of Britonia. So let's set the tone, listening to the one and only. We've got to that old world charm.
Greetings and welcome to That Old World Charm, episode 28. My name, as always, is Adam Camilleri, and I'm joined by the full triumvirate, the charmed ones, the sweet meats himself, Danny McDevitt. Hello, brother.
Hey, man.
And the Falcon cacaring onto his perch in the old world. Hello.
Yes, my name, as sometimes, is Peter.
Yes, that too. If you were like,
No.
would you be better or worse than a blood falcon?
That's a good question. I think in my current physical shape, I would be much worse.
But you would hit harder if you did, like, because you're heavier, right?
I guess, like, if you shot me out of whatever an ogre shoots a blood falcon out of, maybe, I guess.
He bowls it like a ball. He just
then I'm 100% better, because, like,
Yeah.
I'm very round right now. I'm working on it. I'm becoming less round, but
That's good.
I think
I'm imagining you being wielded like that kid on Hook, you know, where he pulls his legs up and just rolls down the gangplank.
Yeah.
There we go. There's the nostalgia bait everyone was waiting for.
Isn't that this whole game?
It freaking is,
everything
mate.
about
That's
this is nostalgia.
yeah. You nostalgia berries are aflutter with delight. But
Like,
anyway, we are
I just picture myself more like Chunk on Goonies. Like, that's how I would
Yes.
be in a Warhammer Fantasy Battle game. Like, if I was
Yes.
a model, it would just be me with my shirt up, just like rubbing my belly and
doing
dancing
the truffle shuffle.
while
Yeah.
Corey Feldman yells at me.
We got the pizza dude coming. Anyway, it's
Mhm.
different. That's a different Corey Feldman show. Also very good, The Burbs. All right, we are here. We're going to do a mission structure episode. We've done one similar to this, but we have actually designed our own missions. We're not putting this forward as some kind of GT pack or something where, you know, we want to compete with others who are doing a very good job already. But we're going to discuss missions. We're discussing what you can do out there to make things more interesting, more dynamic, and create a bigger play pattern for enjoyment in your games of the old world. And by all means, you know, use what we're discussing here, take them, you know, at complete verbiage and run with them if you so please. But this is just for an open discussion. So each one of us has designed a mission, which we're going to be talking about in a moment after we go through some general mission chat. But above and beyond that, thank you everyone who's already signed up to our Patreon. You can go over and grab the part 2 of this episode where we will actually be reviewing a custom-made faction. I think it's the Slaneshi one that was made by one of our wonderful Patreons.
Oh, the
7
Cult of
years
Pleasure?
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cult of
Yeah.
Pleasure. We're going to be reviewing that. So what is old is new once again. And we'll also be answering some Patreon questions. So if you want to get involved there and join our lovely Discord community, that is That Old World Charm over at Patreon. And hopefully you will.
Notice how, like, usually we like to talk about the games we've recently been playing, but Adam is refusing this week.
He won't do it.
The games we had last week.
In part 2, we were definitely going to be talking about the games that we've had. I've played 2 games into Peter's Demons. Once with my Empire, which went okay, and once with a skew list of ogres, which was the worst defeat I've taken thus far in the old world. Possibly the worst defeat I've taken in the entirety of me playing fantasy. So I'll definitely be telling you about that. I tried very hard to make Man-Eaters work, and no, it did not. All right, but
Yeah, it turns out they can't do much if you just ignore them.
if you just run
walk away.
the crap away, they just lol. All right,
Is that why they
Danny.
need pistols?
Yeah, maybe.
I had great weapons. What characterizes the current missions? Like, how would you describe the current missions to a new player? Their pros and cons, and, you know, what's the modus operandi?
Currently, the missions give you a way to play the game with a slightly different deployment zone.
Full stop. Yeah.
Full stop.
Look, the name of the game, and probably for a long time, will be like killing your opponent's models to get victory points. So Victory points from mission to mission are pretty standard, but basically the missions, what they do is they screw with your deployment, like they change the deployment zones, or they screw with the way that your army deploys, and they make it hard for your army to deploy like you want it to.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's really it. And then there's one where if you kill enough stuff, the game just ends.
That's
Yep.
true.
It's really kind of meh. And there's one where
Triple
you get a
kill.
couple extra victory points if you're in the middle of the board.
So
Is that the Watchtower?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the main issue that I have with all the current mission structures is, I mean, apart from them being virtually the same thing with a different hat, is that the mission messes with your plans rather than incentivizing you to make cool, dynamic, and interesting plans and ways to play the game. It's just like takes what you would normally do in your deployment and just kind of a little bit. And that's pretty much in a random and delightful way. And that is pretty much the extent of the impact that they have. And I've played many we used to be called Dawn Attack.
Dawn Attack, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
Dawn Attack, where you roll for each unit in your army and on a one in reserve. And one player would get absolutely effed in the A by that, and the other player would get, absolutely nothing. That all their best units would start on the table. And the other player wouldn't have their level 4. And you were just like, ha, you're at my mercy.
Yeah, and that's happened to me so far once in Old World. My worst defeat ever to our good patron Mish, playing as Bretonia. He'll tell you, I had my Wood Elf list. I think all of my Sisters of the Thorn and my dragon ended up starting off the board, and he didn't have anything start off the board. So it was great for him. So.
Yeah, and the fact that these missions mess with your plans in an arbitrary way, where it's just literally a binary, did you get screwed over or didn't you? It makes me feel I really do not like them. I would much rather missions that, like I said, incentivize you to do something unique and interesting on the table rather than someone just starts at a disadvantage because of the mission structure. So,
do you guys feel like you played the rulebook missions in 8th edition very often, or do you just sometimes? I always felt like I was playing like a pack for a tournament that I was planning on attending. So, we were always practicing those missions rather than playing the rulebook missions all the time.
I would say I played the rulebook missions frequently enough. Like most of the time when we played in the club, we were playing with it was almost always just like pitched battle, because that was the simplest one because it didn't fuck with anything. Occasionally you'd roll it out just for funsies, but and then sometimes we would do like a Swedish tournament comp style scenario, but yeah.
I would play either Swedish comp or I'd play reskinned rulebook missions. Like it's pretty much rulebook missions with a secondary attached to it.
Sure.
So kill points were always the primary, but then you'd have another way to score points.
Yeah.
What makes a good mission, Peter?
Not what we currently have. I mean, like the pitched battle concept is perfectly fine to have as a one-off, I think, in a tournament. But for me, I want missions that make me rethink how I have to build my list. Like I can't just optimize for one specific case. You know what I mean? Like I want there to be like multiple possible secondary objectives or primary objectives I need to consider when I'm building my list, rather than just like what's the most efficient way to kill or outmaneuver my opponent.
I've got so bring up a good point, the secondary one. There are a lot of mission structures that give you choice in the secondary you choose to pursue. And that is one that we saw a lot in other game systems. They will be unnamed. But that I think could be a really interesting thing to bring to the old world, especially like in a event, like you have a 5-game event and you get handed a pack of 6 secondary cards when you go in, and one of them says, kill your opponent's general this game for X amount of points. One says, have a unit with a banner and a rank in your opponent's deployment zone for X points at the end of the game. Stuff like that. And then you have 6 because there's one that you discard that you never want to use, and there's one you can use twice. So and those kind of rules to make it more dynamic. Like if you had the 5-pack, of course, you'd want to build in something that was really good for magic heavy armies, one that's really good for infantry heavy armies, one that's really good for cavalry heavy armies, etc., etc. And yeah, those kind of things can really be used to spice things up. If you just take rulebook missions, you just add something like that, and all of a sudden you're off to the races with something unique and that plays differently every game across 5 games.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show. Something that Warhammer Fantasy Battle used to have back in 6th edition. There was a White Dwarf that Gav Thorpe put out, a famous, Black Library author for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, which was a scenario generator for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and it kind of did just that. So when you before rocking up to a game, instead of just rolling a d6 to see what mission you had, you would do that, but then you would also roll like 2d6 to determine like what your secondary objective was, and there was a list of possible ones you could have, and you and your opponent would roll to see what you had for that game, and that added like a little unique extra flair for there were options like kill them all, which your victory points were doubled for the game, or capture, where there was an objective that was placed on the board that you got to capture for extra points. And you just didn't know what you were going to get coming into the games. And I really like that structure. If anybody's interested, you can just Google that. There are people that have posted it for free. There's also a really interesting, and I really like it, extra like major events and minor events table you roll on to begin the game if you like to add that extra flair, where you both roll a d6, and if you roll the same number, there's like a game changing effect that gets applied to the board, kind of like what we used to have with like Fog of War, except there's other options. Cool. And then if you both roll and the dice roll equals a 7, it's a minor event instead. But yeah, I did play a few of these back in the day, and I actually really enjoyed them. And I think a lot of it applies even now. You might just have to adjust like the bonus points to make it work out. But yeah,
yeah, cool, good shout.
I like that,
What else makes a good mission, Danny?
So for me, I think that like game design has moved past this probably to more of the situation you're talking about, Adam, where you have these like a deck of secondary objectives, and they're all good for you because like there are things that you probably want to do or things that you can do. Like I know in 8th edition and previous versions of Fantasy, I played a lot of like custom missions from events that were punishing to specific army archetypes rather than like promoting like you playing your army like in this different way. It would punish you for taking lists that were like too one-dimensional. So there'd be like one that would punish cavalry armies, one that would punish magic heavy armies, one that would punish heavy shooting armies, stuff like that. So that it was, you really had to work at it if you wanted to go with one of those like not taking all comers list to like try and like win these missions. If you wanted to take kind of more of a like a skew list. So I like that aspect a bit, and I'd like to explore that more. But I also like the idea of not making things punishing for people to play whatever they want to, and like maybe make it more like trying to achieve specific objectives. I may like those to be more anchored on a game-to-game basis rather than you having like a deck of cards that you can play one or the other. And I have played in events that are like that, and those are a really cool way to play the game. I do really like those cards. But like, like making sure that like, okay, well, this mission, like you have to do this one thing, like it's written into the mission rules. And that kind of makes the game more about trying to accomplish that rather than just like killing your opponent. So it should have a factor that's like outside of the normal way that you win Warhammer. I guess that's my rambling way of saying that.
I like
it. Yeah, I totally agree in every way. So transitioning from here, actually, no, there's more to discuss here because we haven't discussed deployment. So right now we have pretty much 3 versions of deployment. We have long edge, we have short edge, and we have corners, as we would call the Vanguard deployment, I guess. Is there any other that warrant a look in? I mean, there's a lot of spicy ones in many other games that we should not even try to adapt to the old world because they just don't make sense. But are those 3 good enough, or should we add some more?
I have a different one for the mission that I wrote today.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Wait,
I know.
I'm
I'm
not
aware of
incorrect, right? There are just pretty much those three, right?
Well, there's shortened long edge deployment, right? Like
that.
there's
Yeah,
the
they
one
like
that,
Yeah.
take away like your flanks, so
Yeah.
like you
Yeah,
have
that's
to deploy
correct.
6 inches from the edge
Yeah.
or whatever.
but other than that, yeah.
Not really. Yeah, you're right, Adam.
We call that the
Um,
nipple. Nipple deployment.
I really like, and this is the one that I'm gonna. So I'll talk about it now. The 40K one, where it's like the edge of the table to halfway up the the
Yes.
long edge.
Yep.
I think that one could adapt to fantasy very well.
That's the one I wanted to talk about as well. So it's a
Yeah.
variant on the corners, the diagonal deployment, but it's a bit deeper. Sorry, it's more shallow rather. It's more shallow.
Oh,
and
I
goes
was thinking the
further.
deeper one. Do we
Oh,
have that
okay.
in fantasy battle right now?
No, don't we just have the 13.5 by 17.5 or 21.5?
Yeah. That's
That's what we've got right now. But yeah, I like the one you're talking about where it's halfway up to the corner.
Yeah, so it's like it would be like you could play Battle for the Past sort of that way, but you're limited like how far forward you can put that like edge unit, right? Yeah, I don't know.
The one I wanted to shout out is the step up, step down one they've got in 40K at the moment, where it almost looks like a yin and yang, where you have it's a long table deployment, but the left side of each player's deployment is halfway up is very deep in, and it's mirrored. So you're closer on your left flank, on each left flank is closer to the opponent, but it's still the same distance from their lines because you make that edge shallower. It's hard to describe, but you get the idea when I say yin and yang. So it's squared
it's like an
off.
L.
Yeah, it's like two L's oppositing each other, and I quite like that for the old world. I think that makes.
I mean, you could
some
literally,
interesting things.
Adam, you could call that flank attack, and that's
Yeah,
like
you could.
what that mission could be like, and
Yeah.
that would be a cool mission probably. I love that deployment zone.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. So you can never be in charge range turn one, although vanguarding things could get a little spicier because I think you're only 18 inches away from corner to corner in the middle. So there are some things that can make that, but it's a big gamble to just like deploy in that little corner right in the middle of the table and like just yeet it. But that's the only downside I see to that one being included. All right, who's making good missions now, Peter? Have you seen anybody out there that's pushing the envelope and making for exciting mission play?
Not really. Most people are kind of sticking to the book. We've seen like comped packs more than anything with like, you know, the occasional secondary objective added into the mix, but I haven't seen any like real overhauls of the game personally. Now that's not to say that it isn't out there outside of like narrative events.
Danny, can you explain to people how Blood and Glory works this edition? Because I have a variation that I'd like to make to it, which I think represents the game better. But how does it work now? It's just like you kill enough, the game's over, right?
Oh yeah. If you reach your opponent's breaking point, like you just win the game automatically.
Yeah.
I have never liked that mission.
Nah, it's trash.
I do like the promotion of standard, like because it doesn't revolve around standard bearers anymore, right?
No,
because it used to revolve around banners, and I liked that better because it encouraged people to take more banners, so they wouldn't just lose. But I agree that it's a very wonky way to play it. But yeah, Adam, I'm excited to hear about yours because I like the concept there.
Yeah, so you change it to essentially, instead of being Blood and Glory, you change it to essentially being marked for death. So me as the opponent. Let's say I'm playing Peter. I have to pick a troop unit, a special, and a rare unit from my army, in addition to a character unit. And you got to try and make it an uneven number. You got to try and make it to at least 5. So at least minimum 3, if not up to 5 units. I have to pick from my own army that I have to not give up, and they have to be from as many delineations of different unit slots as possible. So as many different delineations of character, troop, special, rare. Can't all be from troop, can't all be from special, can't all be from rare. And so you get to break them down. If they don't have any rare choices, has to be a second troop. If they don't have a second troop, has to be a second special or a second character, etc., etc. And those are the things you have to break and destroy from your opponent. And so the cool thing about that is people get to build that into their list and actually make it interesting. So it brings back that spice that we had from the banners, people taking more banners. You actually take units like, and also it will incentivize people to not just take min core trash units which is kind of where we're at the moment. Unless you have a really good troop choice, you are kind of stuck taking attacks. And I would like missions that change army construction, that change the incentives of army construction. And that's where I'm kind of pushing the envelope in my head, at least. That one, that concept is something that definitely needs to be play tested and ironed out. But just that was just an idea I had in the shower the other day, where most of my good ideas come from, if that was one. But what do you guys think of that? Is that something that could fly?
Yeah, I think with some tweaks, I really like the concept. I think you kind of make it, you have to make it hurt for someone to not go like the distance. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that would add something where, you know, if you have a character, a special, a troop, and a rare, like you have to pick one of each, but then you also have, but that lets you have like say 5 units instead of 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where you go with that. So that way people aren't just like stuffing special if that's their best
Correct.
thing. Like they'll think like, okay, I do need to take something in my rare slot. Because unfortunately, where rare used to be this like big deal, a lot of the factions don't have like rare slots they care to take right now.
Straight up, they don't. I think the way to do it is if you did not have 3 of those slots, if you do not have an even delineation of troop, special, rare, your opponent gets to pick the last 2.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I like that.
That would really
or
hurt.
maybe
They'll be like,
or maybe alternate with your opponent.
oh yeah, picking, like you pick one of yours, pick one of theirs. Yeah, that could be cool as well.
The only issue I see, Adam, is that like stacking up a Death Star or something like that.
Exactly right. Well, that's why putting characters in there is an awkward one, because it could be that you pick their Shator Torok in Chaos Dwarves, which is just like going to be out by itself and is not very defensible. It's very good for the points, but you know it's very easy to get those with a single cannon shot or 2. Or you pick someone's freaking Dwarf King on Shield Bearers who's toughness 10 and can't be killed. And it's a full unit of hammerers.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so definitely would need some thinking around it. But anyway, well, that wasn't even my mission, boys. I just wanted to discuss that as ways
that
we
was
can
just off the cuff.
You just gave us an extra mission.
No,
People,
I wanted to talk
why aren't
about...
you paying into our Patreon?
Jesus Christ! Adam's like the teacher's pet over here. He came with like extra credit work.
Adam is giving you guys free shit.
So I literally wanted to talk about that and talking about ways we can use mission structure to influence list design to make people take or incentivize people to take a more dispersed, less skewy, less, over the top list construction. Punish people for taking, so many pegs and then 10 archers in their troop slot and you're like, bang, pick them up points. So that kind of stuff. Is something that we can a lever we can really pull a mission design to incentivize. But anyway, let's go into the missions designed by us. Peter the Falcon, kick us off.
Oh, I have to go first. Okay, I see how it is. Okay, so the mission I designed, I'm stealing a lot from 40K here and making it my own. But it's not like some of these haven't been used in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So I don't know. I'm stealing it from somebody. So I call this maintaining the initiative or strategic positions. This is a scenario that I built where there are no kill points. The only victory points you can get for killing are capturing banners. I've still allowed for that. The BSB and the general. That's it. All of your other victory points come from board control and objective play. In my head, this is a 3 objective mission, and it's pitched battle or battle line deployment. So 12 inches up, 24 inches between you, and you will have an objective marker that's about 6 inches from your left board edge on your deployment zone line. So right at that 12-inch mark. One in the direct center of the board, and one in and then one kind of mirrored on the other side. So 6 inches from your opponent's left-hand side. And the way things go is you score 100 victory points if you control the middle objective. And by controlling, you have to have a unit strength that is higher than your opponent's unit strength on that objective.
Yep.
After every turn, not the full round, but just for the turn, you get that 100 points. And if you control your opponent's objective, their quote unquote home objective, you get 150 points at the end of every turn for doing that. You score nothing for holding your own objective. That's just free real estate, baby. So you have the potential to score 500 points a turn. You cannot score until the start of turn 2. So turn 1, there's no scout shenanigans or whatever you can pull to steal. And so that's like your primary victory points. Just like the basics, units that are fleeing can't count for holding an objective. Now I have a secondary objective here, and this one is battlefield dominance. This is an end of game 4 quarters objective. So at the end of the game, you can score an additional 100 points if you have a higher unit strength in either of the quarters that you deployed in. So potential for 200 points from that. And you can score an additional 150 points if you have a higher unit strength within your opponent's deployment zone quarters. So for another 300 there. So in total, you could get up to 3,000 victory points, not counting general or whatnot in this scenario. I've added some caveats. If you have a unit that is in more than one quarter, right now I've kind of written it that they don't count towards holding any of these quarters. They have to be wholly within, just to avoid fights of which quarter is this unit actually, and blah blah blah. If you're holding the middle of the line, you get nothing. And then I've added a scenario special rule, and this is kind of to help with spicing things up from a list design perspective, and that I call it they stand with us. So core units actually count their unit strength as being doubled for determining if they control any objective, so long as they're within 6 inches of their general or their battle standard bearer. So it's not just all of them. They have to be within 6, and then they get this big boost. I've also put that no unit can hold more than one objective at the same time, because that's a thing that's happened in 40K before. And
Line hammer.
Back and forth. So if you have a unit that's strung between 2 objectives, maybe you have this giant skirmishing unit or a line hammer scenario that you're trying to play off of, you have to pick which objective they're controlling. And you only score the unit strength for the unit, the models that are actually on that objective.
So you can't be massively strung out with one guy towing on thinking you got unit strength 30 or whatever.
You could do it if you're trying to be real sneaky, but you can't double dip basically, right? So
I like that, dude. I think that mission is sick. So could you explain the deployment again to me?
So it's standard battle line. So
pitch battle, 12 inches up and
12 inches up, 24 inches between you. I mean, that could be modified. There might be a better one, but in my mind, you could also probably do corners with this and have them kind of strung out. But I like the just battle line. It's simpler for everybody.
I think there's enough going on there. You don't need to complicate it with a weird deployment. I love that mission, man. I think it's sick. The fact he gets 0 points for killing anything, I think is something everyone should have a try, because I actually think it makes you better at the game. I think actually just makes you kind of better at a movement phase, nuanced game, because the vast majority of the nuance in fantasy battles is making sure you move correctly. And just playing when you don't have to kill each other, it really incentivizes a lot of dynamic movement and really thinking about where you can position things. I like that you thought about where the crosshair is on the table quarters, and the fact that people can't just straddle and do that nonsense. I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's good.
What kind of this is going a little bit deeper, and you may not have had time to think about this, but what kind of terrain would you think makes the most sense on this kind of board?
I think with these, I think you still follow the standard book rules of nothing within the 12 inches. So you kind of have free reign on that middle objective. And then I believe you kind of want something, some kind of forest or building scenario, not on the objectives. I believe that should probably be a rule, that you can't put a tower on your objective or something like that for extra protection.
Yeah, that's right.
But forests or any other kind of difficult terrain, something that kind of also blocks off your opponent, makes it even that much more difficult to get at your home objective, I think would fit thematically, because in my mind, these are strategic positions you're trying to hold. So it should make sense that at least the 2 in your home deployments are more defensible than normal. And yeah, that's basically what I would leave it at. So kind of a standard terrain deployment, but with a caveat that you can't put a tower or something that you can garrison
I like
um,
that.
on the objective or within, say, 3 inches of the objective.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Do you foresee any holes in this? Do you foresee the like what are the upsides, downsides of this mission? And if anything, like what armies does this overly benefit?
I mean, this probably like the emphasis on core. This is probably going to emphasize bigger bricks for holding that middle board. So because you want something that's going to have a lot of unit strength that can take advantage of the doubling from the general, and that can also like give ground. It may favor, say, like vampires or tomb kings a little too much.
That's what I was about to say.
Because of like
Sure.
unbreakable, but at the same time, it's also a one that's not bad for dwarves because you can easily slam something real big and thick in the middle and you're not worried as much anymore. Wood elves have to really rethink a lot of their lists because like other than like big boy on a dragon, they often don't have stuff that can last. So you're going to be constantly trying to steal objectives. I think there's some interesting play there. I don't see too many huge holes, especially if it's not like your only scenario, right? If you're doing this along with actual kill point scenarios still and other things, it just gives your players something else to think about when they're going to an RTT or going to a tournament,
For sure,
or just randomly rolling, right? So,
Danny, any comments?
Yeah, I agree that I think vampires and Tomb Kings have a real good time with that because not only are they unbreakable, but also they get to come back to life.
Yeah.
But I do like that emphasizes more larger blocks of infantry rather than like the single monster kind of stuff you see from Tomb Kings. Like right now, vampire counts are already running those because they're good for that army. That's I like that mission a lot. I think it would be interesting to play. It definitely makes your chaff feel like I would use them more in that game if I didn't care about them dying as much.
Yeah.
So like I would use a lot more charge blocks, a lot more charge redirectors, stuff like that to try and get points and try and divert my opponent from getting on to the objectives. So
yeah, like sorry to interrupt. Yeah, like that's something we've kind of seen a lot more with 40K with like using these like singular models to block off an objective just enough that you can only fit so many guys on it for that one turn. And I think you could I really think you could start making those plays, putting your warhounds at an angle so that even if they do overrun and reform, they can only tow on like 5 guys or something like that on the objective. Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty slick. I like that mission. I definitely want to play that one at some point.
I like it a lot. Danny, time for your mission, mate.
All right. So my mission, and I don't know if you guys ever played missions like this, that it's called Magic Flux. So it messes with the magic phase a little bit.
I get that. I get that all the time after the Taco Bell.
That's a different kind of flux, Adam.
That's pretty magical.
So basically, you would roll a dice at the start of like the battle round. So this would be between both players' turns, not just one player. And so the player taking the first turn rolls a dice. On a 1 or a 2, all spells, and this includes bound spells, are +2 to cast. And they are -1 strength from magic attacks that are dealt from spells. So like, if there's a vortex or magic missile, something like that, it'll be -1 to the strength value of those spells. And then you miscast on any doubles. 3 to 4 is no change. You play the turn like normal. 5 to 6, it's -2 to cast, but you get +1 strength on magic attacks or spells, but you also still miscast on any doubles. Miscast can also be modified by your opponent by plus or -1. So you can change around kind of what your opponent rolls when they roll that miscast. So there's kind of a high risk, high reward. Now, victory points in this mission are standard kill points. Those are part of it, but you also get extra points for casting spells. So if you cast between 3 to 6 spells over the course of the game, you get an extra 100 victory points. 7 to 10 is 200, and 11 plus is 300 points. If you cast successfully no spells over the course of the game, you get 200 victory points.
Ooh, I like that because I was about to say all of a sudden those 2 Casket of Souls and essentially like Wizard Council in More True Cults is just like slavering at the options here of just popping off and getting max. But then like on the other side, I've been writing quite a few ogre lists that don't have any casters. And the fact that I would just get 200 points, that feels pretty good because I'm not partaking. I think this is a really spicy. I think that this I can see this have the chance for some hilarious results.
Oh, dude, the hijinks here are incredible. The nice thing is, being able to modify the miscast table means that you are more likely to be able to end your opponent's magic phase or not have to be able to cast any more spells over the turn.
Yep.
So even if like magic is wild and like going crazy, like you have Tomb Kings or whatever, that are vampire counts that are casting like a billion things every turn, there's a decent chance if they keep doing that they're gonna miscast sooner or later because any doubles is more.
The spicier one here is that you get to deny them the auto cast miscast.
True. Yeah.
You get to just be like, well, that would have been auto cast. Instead, I'm just gonna slap that down or up by one, and then see you later.
You're taking hits.
Or roll my dispel against it because it can't be a perfect invocation or whatever.
I just want to do
one
this
that
so
I
I
thought
can take
was
cupped
fun.
hands of the old ones.
Say all that again, Peter.
I just want to play this mission so I can take cupped hands on my slam and start like blowing people's heads up with all their miscasts.
Man. Yeah.
I love
the
it.
only other thing that I added to this mission was you got 100 extra victory points if you had a wizard within 3 inches of the center of the table.
Okay.
At the end of the game,
just as like
progressive,
just a caster, like a wizard model. So like, and the reason I put that in there is to make people maybe play a little bit more aggressively. So armies that are kind of like castle, like Tomb Kings or something like that. They have to actually risk it at the end of the game if they want to try and get those extra 100 victory points. And it's not like a ton of stuff, but it also kind of is like, this is a site of power. Like they're trying to control magic at the end of the game. It's more of a thematic choice than like an actual balance choice.
I think this is cool. I think sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess
I don't know how competitive it is, but I think it would be a really good time to play the mission.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be a hell of a lot of fun. And I just have the idea in my head that there's going to be like 3 or 4 miscasts a turn every turn. It's just gonna happen. Any doubles, just yikes, popping it off.
Which like I'll go like 4 or 5 games and just not see a miscast.
Me too. Yeah.
So
it's only
it would be
it's only
cool
double
to
ones
see them
now,
a little
so.
bit more often. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to see it. I'd like to see more miscasts because the miscast table is so much more forgiving, but happens so much less often.
Right. Exactly.
Like I had Peter dimensionally cascaded in one of our games, and I think he took 2 wounds on his entire large blast. Like he lost a horror and did a wound to his demon prince, and that was it.
Yep.
Whereas previously you'd be like full sphincter pucker. There goes my 400 point caster on a 4+.
Yeah, I think that game I had more miscasts than I've had for all of Old World so far, and I barely felt it. I got to perfectly invocate a spell that I was really worried about getting off, so it was my advantage anyway, and I perfectly dispelled a spell of Adam's with a miscast. And it was the only spell he needed to cast that turn. So like it was one of those.
Yep.
It was just one of those things where like no matter how many times I miscast, like nothing bad happened to me. So
yeah, I would like to see Danny in your one. If you're already going, no offense, you're already going a bit on the sillier side with just kind of some random nonsense happening.
Yeah.
Let's go real random. Put in another thing on the miscast table. Put in one lower than Dimensional Cascade.
Oh, like a 1 and a 13.
Yeah. Put in one higher and one lower. So it's the full flux. Like the options, the options for bad and good things happening are at the extreme. And so if someone does roll a cascade, you can bump them down one further. If someone does roll the double 6, and you can bump them up one further, and have something even crazy to happen. And the one, I don't know what those would be. They'd have to be pretty severe and or amazing.
13 has to be Skaven related.
It does. It has to
for
be.
Sure.
Yeah. The horned rat pops up and I don't know, gives you a horn. I don't even know. But what's worse? What could be worse than dimensionally cascading? Your opponent gets to place 3 large blasts on your army.
Your opponent gets to place your wizard and his unit anywhere on the table.
To jump them, just gets to handle Gorkum. Just unintended teleportation is what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. My mission. Let's go.
Tell us about it.
So my mission is on corners deployment. So it's the diagonal deployment.
Mhm.
And it is a watchtower variant, which has thrown out the watchtower and replaced it with a hill. But there's not one hill, guys. There's 2 hills. Yeah.
Double
yeah.
hill.
So they're evenly spaced in the no man's land because, of course, you've got that corridor between the 2 diagonal deployments. And there's going to be a primary and a secondary hill, essentially. One of them's going to be a hill, one of them's going to be a forest, is the way I had it in my head.
Okay.
The non-primary one, the secondary one, is a forest, and the main one's a hill. The opponent who is going, I think in my head, it's the opponent who is going second gets the choice, if they want, to start a troop unit, a core unit in the forest, in the secondary location.
Hmm.
And so they get to start a unit there if they wish. They don't have to, because of course you can just get yourself smashed turn 1. But some armies will want to, and it'll be good. But it's a forest, so it kind of has some shenanigans with, if you want to put 100 zombies in it, there are some downsides. The secondary hill, the forest, is only endgame scoring, but it scores you 350 victory points at the end of the game. It's quite a good chunk of victory points.
Yeah.
The primary mission, the hill, is progressive and scores you 100 per turn to the player who has the most unit control, unit strength on it every turn. So that one is just like a pulse. Whoever's within control range of it with the most power and most unit strength gets 100 points at the end of their turn. Your turn, your opponent's turn, your turn, your opponent's turn. So you get 200 points a battle round. If you hold it through your opponent's turn, you still get the 100 points. So it just constantly pops off. And of course, you want to be trying to take it away, give it away, whatever. But then the forest is only end game. And in addition to that, there was there's your primary mission is pretty much the hill and the forest. It doesn't have to be a forest. It could be another hill if you want it to be. But the whole idea was that it was a smaller sphere of influence that you were fighting over on that one for the end game. And the other one was your fast cav. Award no points. So 0 points for fast cav deaths. So and that one was I just chucked that in there for a bit of extra spice, so that you could feel free to use those to throw away, redirect, misdirect at will without possibly bleeding yourself out. But it might benefit Wood Elves a little bit too much. Is my only thing. But then again, I did that because Wood Elves can't really hold either of those objectives very well. Fast cav based armies are really disincentivized on this mission because they have low unit strength and they can't really hold in a stable, a solid position for very long. So I wanted to make something to try and even up the scales.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
All right.
Yeah, I do.
I'm into that.
Come at me, bros. Any questions?
So, all right. So fast cav are worth no point, and I take a fast cav heavy army. What if I just didn't ever let you get on the objective?
Well, then that would be that's exactly right. That'd be what you have to do.
Yeah.
So the idea there is if you played Funny Buggers and stopped me getting on the pulse objective for the entire game, because I thought about this, me being your opponent, I could just bum rush for the forest, get the 350 on the last turn and still win.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did 350 on purpose. I had it in my head as 250 first, and I had it as 300, then 350 because I looked at how many points like a big unit with a good sized unit with a decent character costs, and it's around between 300 and 400 points, give or take. For
Yeah, that's true.
A unit of like chosen knights and a decent character in there, or level 2 caster or whatever, or something like that. And usually it's around that point. So I wanted it to be equivalent of a good unit in your army worth of points.
I'm thinking there's a lot of subtlety here, Adam.
Yeah. So the other thing was
I like this way better than Watchtower.
Dude, it's not hard to make something that's that's almost backhanded, Danny. But the other one I want to think about is that units that don't use fast cav as misdirectors, like I use saber tusks and noblars and stuff like that. So how would those armies that don't have fast cav but have redirectors in other modes, how would we give them the same kind of dispensation? Like would it be
maybe use like war beasts?
Yeah,
That
single model war
option.
beast units don't count for points.
And skirmishers?
And dwarves. Dwarves don't count for points.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dwarves especially.
I was going to say things with unit strength X or lower don't count. which would have been another easy way to do it. But then that means just like people with 5 sword masters like get away with not giving up any points and stuff like that, and it becomes a different kind of skew. So you can't really make one rule that saves all the skew. You'd have to write a paragraph and include all of them, or just you have to just draw a line and leave some out. Because as ogres, I don't have any fast cav. It's 0. I get no benefit from this, but I have like small units that have huge unit strength, so I get a lot of other benefits from this.
I think you could say, even then, if you did fast cav, single wound skirmishers, and war beasts, maybe single wound skirmishers might be too much, but
So it would be skirmish units in skirmish formation don't count. That makes sense.
Yeah.
If you want to take rangers and close order them, they would count. But then they don't. They also don't count for scoring. Like you can't use their unit strength on the objectives. Sorry if I didn't say that. Yeah, fast cav don't count, but they can't score.
I see.
Okay.
You don't lose points for using your fast cav, but they can't be used to just bum rush on and start getting the 100 points on the progressive.
I see.
So it's both ways. Yeah, because like turn 1 would have play always gets 100 points because in this mission, if they go first,
exactly,
they just shoot out. Yeah, but then it's really hard for them to actually score the points. But so they just have to completely, just play like wood elves would, and just misdirect and play funny buggers. And there was a kill points component to this that I dropped. But if you would add a kill points component to this, because I was thinking more like a more incentivizing having units left at the end of the game rather than whatever. Because the way I see it is one player is going to be, trading on 2 and then getting pushed off the objective. Pretty much in the ebb and flow of a game, someone's going to get to these objectives first. And then, hopefully if this is an even skilled, even army strength game, they're going to get pushed off, take it back, push off, take it back, which means most likely they're 100 points up for the majority of the game because they were the first ones on. So how do I balance that was the last thing I was trying to quantify. The crowd goes mild. I love it.
I'm trying to conceptualize it. Like where
I also think of this as a game
last
of
turn
tennis.
is important. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, the last turn is very important. But yeah. And so I wanted to give the play with the last turn a little bit of juice.
Yeah, and they're already getting like some juice from just being able to stick a unit on the thing.
Of course. What am I talking about? They get the last say on the forest.
Yeah.
They get the last say to go and get the 350. Yeah, don't worry, I already thought about this. Sorry. I went around in circles on this mission quite a lot. It was a very long shower. But those are the 3 missions that we did. I'd love to hear in the comments in the chat if you would play in a 1-day 3-game event using our 3 missions. Because I think that'd be really cool. Because we've got like a very well balanced, no kills matter mission by Peter. We've got a extremely wacky but probably extremely fun mission by Danny, and then mine is just like a war of attrition, grind in the middle, which I like a lot because I wrote it, obviously.
No, it's a cool mission. I like it.
I do like it.
What deployment did you have for yours, Danny? Because Peter had pretty much just long table 12 inches up.
Yeah,
What was yours?
I was going to do the fat corner to middle of the table.
Oh yeah, so we do have 3 different deployment styles.
Yeah.
I was thinking that my one could be done on short edge in Battle for the Pass, but then it's a risk of the 2 objectives being too close to each other. So I thought mine had to be pretty spread out.
I do think they need to be spread out. I agree with you.
You want at least like 18 inches between the spheres of influence of the 2 of the forest and the hill. And like I said, they don't have to be a forest and a hill. They can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I like the rules of the forest brought to the end game shenanigans as well, because it makes your opponent a little bit easier to push off, but a little bit harder to shoot off. So I thought that was good. All right, gents. Is there any missions that you really want to see? Like, is there a mission that you really wanted to try and write that you couldn't quite get your head around right now? Like, because I had like a bunch kicking about in my noggin that I like of mission concepts that I couldn't quite get to an end point of. Peter, did you have one?
Yeah, so there used to be this mission like way back. It was a raiding mission that I always wished there was a better way to make like competitive. And it involved, I think it was 4 towers or 5 towers on the board. And players would have to try and garrison that a tower for one full round, and they weren't allowed to stay in it. But if they managed to garrison it for a full round without being kicked out, they would score points. There's like an attacker defender scenario where the defenders were trying to save the people in the tower effectively, and attackers were trying to raise it and kill things. And there were bonus points that were being given. And I spent a while thinking about that and how I could change it to make it a little more streamlined and less complicated. That's kind of one that I threw to the wayside because, I was going to stick to something I knew, which is, objective based missions. But I feel like there's something there, like a multi-tower scenario.
Yeah,
That's
I like
cool.
that. That sounds cool.
That does sound really fun. Yeah.
What about you, Danny?
Sorry.
Sorry. Go Peter. No. We're not finished with Peter yet. He isn't satisfied.
No. I just need to think it out more. So don't bother, because I'll be here for 20 minutes. So Danny.
So there are 2 ones that I really like, or that I really like the concept of, that I'd like to see again. The first of which is like a burning terrain like scenario where units can kind of like move into forests and stuff like that, or like a building and like burn it down. Like that stuff I think is really cool. And then the other one that I would like is like kind of a soccer style mission. And I don't know if you guys ever played those, where like you move onto objectives, and then once your unit does that, you can move the objective like 36 inches or whatever, and you try and like kick it into your opponent's deployment zone.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like that. One that I had, so I've always thought about, how Bestigors, in Distance Gone By, every time they killed a unit with a banner, they got the banner and they got a little buff.
Yeah.
I would like that, just an army-wide special rule in a mission where like you take an opponent's banner, your unit gets a buff. And it's just number of banner. Each banner's worth, I don't know, 50, 75 points if it's a BSB, 100 points if it's your general's head or whatever. And they just add them up, and your unit with holding so they pick up tokens and they get different buffs throughout the game. And then you add them up at the end, as long as that unit's still alive and they've captured what they've captured.
That's
really
cool.
Like that too. Yeah.
We kind of already see that with the Seawolves Arcane Journal, right? With
I think that's what brought it. I think that's what brought it back to my mind.
There has to be an incentive to take banners, though, too, right? Because
Correct.
otherwise, because right now people aren't taking banners. I feel like that's something that needs to be explored in like a general's handbook or something. If GW is going to create new missions, is like, how do we promote people bringing banners? Because right now there's not a whole lot of reason to.
Yeah. The other one that I've had, and I've always wanted to do, because I think of thematic battles in history and stuff like that. The one that comes to mind is like Alexander burning the boats, or people fighting with their back to a river to incentivize, And so the idea would be, so you deploy just so close to each other, like you deploy like 12 inches away from each other, but the person deploying, so one person deploys on their table edge, long style. The other person deploys 12 inches away. The person who deploys 12 inches away is always going first. Your opponent, the person who is defending, who is not going first, cannot flee because their back's to a river. All you can do is try and Fabigo and bounce them into the river. And so they can never be broken and run down, but you can always just push them, follow up, push them, follow up. Extremely hard to balance, but I think is a really cool concept.
That does sound cool.
5th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle had a mission like that.
Correct.
2 of them. So
correct.
Oh, really?
That's where it's from, man. And yeah, I love that you knew that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, they had one. They had a board edge one, and then they had ambush, which was you started in the middle. One army started in the middle, and you were surrounded. But the army that started in the middle, I think the one Adam's describing, you started with less points if you were against the board edge, but you got more victory points. Like it was expected you would die, so you got more victory points by killing your opponent's stuff.
Spot on. Everything was worth like, I can't remember if it was 30 or 50% more points. I think it was 50% more points.
Yeah, something like that
for the kills. Yeah, I like that. I love that idea. But there are so many matchups in the game at the moment where that thing can't be balanced. It cannot be balanced. But yeah, I love the idea of using Fabago and bounce backs and stuff like that as a concept for a mission, because I think that's a really cool thing that we have in the game now. We haven't had in the game in ages, and to build that as a core concept for a mission, I think is really funny.
There was also a really cool idea in 5th edition called Treasure Hunt, where how did that work? You played both players. The scenario was that both players were trying to gather a treasure and keep it from the other player. And the person that went first was the person willing to sacrifice the most. So you would have to pick a number between 2 and 11. Mm-hmm. And if the higher the number, the faster you were going to go. So that would determine you went first and started with the treasure. But then you would have to roll a 2d6 for each of your units. And if the number was it higher or lower than whatever number you picked, that was lower. Then like you lost like half the unit, or you lost the whole unit. Yeah. So like if you said 11, there was like, a 90% chance each one of your units was going to die before the game started.
Correct. If you said like a 10, and had like the very high chance of going first, it was also a very high chance you were going to smack the crap out of your army before turn 1. It was very funny. But then people gained that when they realized that in some mission formats you didn't give up those victory points, and so would just kill their own army, put the treasure on a Pegasus Lord, and play keep away. Yeah. And it was very funny.
I don't know. That's fun. I don't know. There's some fun value in that too. Just
me too.
Maybe less so from the Pegasus Lord running away from you the entire game.
Yeah, playing on interactive nonsense. But I want a nice delineation between fun, thematic, awesome, hilarious moments and competitive, crunchy, like trying to find the minutia of like 5% advantage I can glean from this position over this position. I want both. I'm a full spectrum enjoyer of the old world. And I hope you guys are too, because that's going to finish us up for this part 1. It's going to be a couple of days before we record part 2, so we may wait until part 2 is recorded before we release both of these, or we might send this one out to the patrons as soon as it's done, because we don't like to keep you guys waiting. So if you do want to get your episodes a little bit early, come over to come over to That Old World Charm over on Patreon. Almost said the wrong show, and join in and get some of this goodness. We will be discussing my absolute trouncing at the hands of Peter the Falcon's demons, and actually talking a little bit about demons holistically, because that might be the next review we do, because I think there's a lot to discuss there, and people are starting to catch on that there's some meat on the bone to that faction. Peter, Danny, anything you'd guys like to say before we check out?
I love you, my babies.
Oh, he did it. Yikes. My skin doth crawl. Danny, what about you?
Oh, just the kissing noises I just made. That's it.
All right, beautiful. There he is.
You've been listening to That Old World Charm with those charming chaps, Adam, Danny, and Peter the Falcon. Thanks ever so much. Cheerio.